Are you struggling to get a handle on your finances? What if there was a simple formula to help you effectively budget without overthinking it? Luckily, that's where the 50-30-20 rule comes in. Hi, I'm Jacob Wade from Lunch Money. I'm a financial coach, and today I want to break down the 50-30-20 budgeting method, which is a straightforward way to manage your money to help you spend less, save more, and hit your financial goals a lot faster. I'm going to explain how the 50-30-20 rule works for your budget, why it's an effective way to help you save more money, and show a real life example of what that could look like. And if you stick around to the end, I want to show you how you can actually build the 50-30-20 budget into Lunch Money so you can make sure you're on track with your money at all times. All right, so what exactly is the 50-30-20 rule? Well, it comes from a book written by Senator Elizabeth Warren, and the idea is to break down your budget into three simple categories. You have your needs, you have your wants, and then you have savings and debt repayment. And those three categories is how you're going to split up your money that you earn for the month. And the idea behind these three buckets is to make it easy to look at your numbers and go, okay, can I put 50% toward my needs only? Can I bring my budget down to that amount? Can I try to make sure I'm spending guilt-free on stuff that I enjoy, right? Put 30% of your money toward the things you actually like, and then it guarantees you're putting away 20% of your money, which is a good amount, toward things like saving and future retirement goals. So let's break down each of those categories. First thing is needs. 50% of your money should go towards your needs. So this includes a rent payment or a mortgage payment. This is your insurance and taxes and any expenses that you cannot live without. These are bills that you have to pay. Now, I will say, yes, streaming services are bills, but those aren't necessities, right? This is where you have to draw a line in the sand and say, if I had to live on a bare bones budget, what are my needs? So make sure you list those things out. Of course, this includes things like utilities. You got to put food on the table. This is groceries. This is your car insurance. This is gas money, things like that. But nothing else goes in this category, just those basic necessities. I know you might automatically be thinking, I cannot live on a basic necessity budget with 50% of my income. I'm gonna have to spend a lot more. Rent is expensive where I live, or groceries cost a lot more nowadays than when she wrote the book. Totally understand. And so maybe you need to spend 65% of your income on these needs or more. That's okay. The goal is to try to set your baseline budget and then figure out, are there ways that I can make choices that can get this down to 50% of my needs? Maybe that's negotiating your bills. Maybe it's figuring out a cheaper place to live, right? These are life choices you're going to have to make, but this is just a framework for you to think about, how do I bucket my money so that I can always set aside money for savings? And one way to do that is try to get your needs down to 50% of your budget. All right, so the wants category is things that you actually enjoy. And the rule says to put 30% of your money toward guilt-free spending. Keyword here, guilt-free spending, toward things like dining out or subscription services that you enjoy, or travel, or gym memberships or hobbies, those types of things that make life a lot more fun. The key is you want to make sure you build these things into your budget, because as a financial coach, I've worked with people who tried to only stick to a bare bones budget and they burn out after a month or two. There's no way to stick to this if you have zero fun in your budget. So this one gives you a generous amount, 30%. Now, again, you might be thinking, great, that's high, and I don't have that money. I've got to put more toward my needs. So maybe you're putting 65% towards your needs and just 15% toward your wants. But again, the goal would be, how do I build a life and a budget where I can actually have 30% of my money on guilt-free spending? That would be an amazing goal. Maybe it's something you work toward. But again, the rule is just trying to give you a baseline framework to work from. And then finally, putting 20% of your money towards savings and debt repayment. This is critical, actually, if you want to build wealth long term, is to set aside a good chunk of money and don't compromise on that. Always put money aside. Of course, again, you might be thinking 20% sounds like an amazing goal. I use most of my money. How could I even get there? Maybe start at 10%. Try to build a budget that allows you 10%. And then as you get raises at work, if extra income comes in, ratchet that up to 15 and then eventually get to 20%. It's just a goal that you can set because it pretty much guarantees you're going to have future wealth. You're going to be able to retire if you can set aside 20% of your money. Now, this includes savings, investing, and debt repayment. Now, if you're in credit card debt, if you have student loans, things like that, things that you are paying down, maybe you're putting extra payments toward those debt repayments. This also includes things like opening a Roth IRA and starting to fund that. Or if you don't have a big enough emergency fund in place, you're going to put money toward that. You could take your 20% and split it three ways, right? 10% toward retirement, 5% toward building a bigger emergency fund, and 5% toward extra debt repayments. How you split this up is up to you, but the goal is set aside 20% of your money that doesn't get spent elsewhere, that gives you a return. Now, one tip on the savings piece is to automate it. Treat it like a bill. Say, hey, on the 5th of the month, I'm going to put money into my emergency fund and it's going to go away to my Roth IRA. Set up those recurring payments and make sure that you don't touch it. That's one way to almost guarantee that you're going to save and hit your goals. All right, now I want to show you how in Lunch Money you can actually build the 50, 30, 20 budget and track it in real time. This automates the process and helps you stay on track. So just using $5,000 take-home pay, we're going to split it up 50, 30, 20. So I just put this together here. And again, if you haven't used this before, you can go in and set up the categories by just going into the setup here. You can set up the categories. And I created category groups. One was called needs, one was called wants, one was called savings and debt. So if you go in here, you can see when I set this category group up, you can choose which categories fall into that group. The other cool thing is you could just drag and drop, right? Grab here and drag the categories around. So this is the needs group, and 50% of our budget needs to go toward that. So if I go back over here to the budget, we can take a look at the needs section, and you can see 50% of $5,000 is this $2,500. So we'll give you that subtotal in there as well. But let's just say you are single and your rent is about $1,200 a month. You spend about $400 on groceries, right? This is your gas, utilities, cell phone, internet. These are essential items. Make sure you include debt minimum payments here. A lot of people skip this category, but you got to make the payments on that debt. Otherwise, it's going to go really bad. So that is an essential item. Car insurance, things like that. So this is your needs category. And this is just an example of what it could look like if you set this up in Lunch Money. Now, if we go down to the wants category, this is where we could add some of the fun stuff back into it. Now, I just kept this pretty generic. You can create whatever you want in here. You can add categories at any time in that setup section. But, $200 toward things that are considered entertainment, $300 on restaurants because you like to eat out with friends on weekends, having spending cash for whatever you want, streaming services that you like. And you can, I just put a big bucket in here, and you can see the wants category is actually pretty big. Not only are you spending that money, but you still have about $800 of uncategorized stuff here that you could put toward things that you enjoy. Maybe you start saving for a vacation, or you take a weekend trip to go wine tasting. Whatever that is, you can put this in the wants category. So you can see about $1,500, which is about 30% of our $5,000 budget, goes toward wants. And then finally, the savings and debt repayment category here. So I just put a couple of things. One, maybe you're trying to rebuild that emergency fund, or you're trying to build it to 3 to 6 months, and you've only got a month set aside, but you're like, I want a few thousand more dollars. So you could put about $300 a month toward that. You opened a Roth IRA and you started funding it, and you're putting about $150 a month away. And maybe when you hit your emergency fund goal, this would zero out, right? And then you could start putting $450 a month toward that Roth IRA, getting close to maxing it out. And eventually, maybe the debt repayment goes away, and then you can start funding another investment account. So you can see the goal here is just make sure you get that $1,000 a month, 20% of your budget towards savings and debt repayment, because that's going to accelerate building wealth and getting yourself to a comfortable retirement ultimately. So as you can see, Lunch Money makes this really easy. You can set up those budget groups and budget categories and split that into needs, wants, and savings. And you can quickly see how much am I going to spend in each of these categories. And then as those transactions actually come through, we'll auto-categorize stuff for you. So you know, I'm spending a little bit too much on restaurants, and so maybe I need to spend a little less here. You could start to make real-time decisions to make you stick to that 20% savings rate, which honestly is the ultimate goal of the 50-30-20 budget. It could be just the 80-20 budget. You could mesh your wants and needs and just take 80% of that, but the whole goal of this entire thing is to get you to save 20% of your money. So whatever version works for you, this is again just a framework, but let's get you to saving 20% of your money. And if you want some help with that, we have a free 30-day trial of Lunch Money. You can click the link below, sign up, connect your financial accounts, create those budget groups and budget categories so you can create the 50-30-20 budget that works for your lifestyle. And maybe it's not 50-30-20, maybe it's 70-20-10, right? Like whatever that version is, you can build that into Lunch Money, keep track of your expenses, start putting money away towards savings, start paying down that debt faster, and stay in control of your money. So if you've ever used the 50-30-20 budget, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below to let me know if this is even realistic. Is this something you would ever even try? And if you want to learn more about saving money and maybe you feel like you don't make enough, I made an entire video right here on how to save money even on a very low income. Check it out.